welcome back to Wheelwork. Trust you're doing well as always. So I was hoping this video would be on taking the HZ to do some drag racing, but unfortunately things happen and that didn't end up happening. The event is still happening, but it is for another like week and a half. This video that I'm starting to record now, I've only started recording this video a couple of days after I posted my last video. So what's going on is I've got a couple of problems with the HZ. So I took it for a bit of a drive yesterday. It's its first proper drive that I've done in it since I put the wheels on and all of that stuff, and did all the work to it with the brake master cylinder and all that from the previous video. And we've got two issues that we need to sort out. So it's just the gift that keeps on giving. So I'll just show you what's happened with it. The first problem we've got is to do with the front ride height. So got an issue with the front tires. So before we had a 185 80/15, now we've got a 205 55/17. So obviously a bit of a wider tire. And what's happening when I turn is we are contacting the guard. So if we look up under here, we don't have much room. And I'll just try and get a video of this. I don't know if it will work, but if I just bounce the front of the car a little bit, it's actually it actually does contact. So even if you're just doing a U-turn or something, it gets a bit of scrubbage happening. So that's not good. So how I'm going to overcome that is I've actually got these. So I bought these springs way back when I did an LS swap on this car. The car still has 6-cylinder to a 202 6-cylinder springs in the front of it. And these are actually V8, so 308 V8 springs. Same spring rate, but they do make the front of the car sit slightly taller. I didn't end up fitting them when I did the conversion, because I did bring the front of putting the LS and 6-speed auto in, did bring the front of the car down a little bit, even though it was only about 60 kilos difference between the 202 Trimatic versus the LS with the 6-speed auto. But it did just bring the front of the car down a little bit, and I liked how it looked, and I never had an issue until now. But I did buy these springs, just never actually fitted them. So that's them there. So I've had them sitting around for a while. So what we're going to do first and foremost is I'm going to have to get that car out. It's a customer's car, which is all done. I'll get this on the hoist. We'll get it up in the air, get the front wheels off, and I'll show you how we're going to go about changing these springs. So before I move it into the back, I just thought I'd give you a quick look how the front rider height sits now, and also take a quick measurement, as it will be something to reference back off. So to the bottom of the guard, as I measure, always have done through the center of the wheel down to the ground, we've got 630 mil. So we'll see what happens once we're done. All right, on the hoist, front wheels are off. So how we go about getting springs out of one of these, this applies to HQ to WB as well as LHLX Tirana. So first things first, got to take the shock out, which runs through the center of the coil spring there. So top mount up there, and then underneath the arm, you've got 2 bolts underneath there. Then you've got to take the sway bar link off, just disconnect it, so that's just one nut there, and you stop it from spinning by holding the link there. So I'll go ahead and do that first. Don't mind that there's goop and stuff everywhere. It's just standard. These things do schmoo grease out of the ball joint boots. Nothing to be worried about. That's just how they are. But anyway, I'll get the shock out, get the sway bar disconnected. That's the first 2 steps, and then we'll go from there. Alrighty, shock absorber is out. It's just chilling there. Sway bar link is disconnected. Next thing you want to do is go ahead and remove the lower ball joint split pin nut. So remove that split pin. Crack that nut off, back off about halfway. You want to beat on this part of the knuckle until the ball joint separates. Once you do that, we'll get our stand, this red one here, put it underneath the arm, take some of the weight, finish removing that nut, and then we can lower the stand down, and then in theory, the lower arm should swing out enough for me to get that spring out. So we'll see how we go. All right, and there we have it. So lower ball joint is out. Got that all split apart fairly well. Took the bush off the other sway bar link, the other bush that's set up here. Put the stand underneath the arm to take the weight, took the nut off, lowered that down. So now all I've got to do is, I should be able to pry down on this enough to get that spring out. Otherwise, I will need to loosen off the actual pivot bolts just a little bit to give me a little bit more room. See how we go. Alrighty, it's all out. Just got them sitting side by side here. Obviously old versus new. So you can just see they are a slightly taller spring. So now all we've got to do is the absolute opposite to put it all back together, and then we'll do the same on this side. All right, so we're just winding it all back up now. Just got that ball joint back through, got the nut sitting on there. So I'll tighten that nut up, put a new split pin on it. I'll put the lower sway bar mount back on. I did end up loosening these bolts, by the way, so I'll put a bit more pressure on it because you do need to tighten up these bolts at ride height. So I will wind this up a bit more, tighten them up, shock back in, and then this side's done, and then I'll blow through that side and show you what it looks like when it's finished. Sweet, we're all done. Both sides are all in, everything's tight and back together. The old springs were looking a bit crusty and some of the paint was peeling off it, especially on that side. So it's nice to have some nice fresh redness in there. Even put some new split pins in the ball joint nuts. Schmancy. All right, so all that's left for the suspension side of things is to drop it down, just take it for a drive around the block and remeasure it, see how it sits, see how we're looking for clearance. And I am gonna have to send it for a wheel alignment again, which is happening tomorrow morning. So yeah, so that'll be that side of things sorted. Now, I started this video, I was saying we have two issues, suspension was being one, as you know. The second issue of which is the brakes. So brakes on this car is the thing that's proceeding to annoy me. So as you saw in my previous video, we did a Commodore master cylinder upgrade. On this, we ended up having to put a VS one on and then took it off and put a VT one on, which was a bit bigger. That's all fine. We made all new lines, which is fine. The issue was when I was bleeding the brakes, had an issue with the bleeder nipple. So this one here, the head of it was rounded. I was able to get a new bleeder nipple for that. That's fine. This one, however, when I was bleeding the brakes, had an issue with it leaking. So what actually happened is that bleeder was spinning in the caliper as we went to tighten it, and yeah, it was just hemorrhaging brake fluid out past the side of the bleeder. So what I did to try and fix it, it's a bit hard to see, is I actually helicoiled this caliper. That is not something that you should do on a brake caliper, but I wanted to try and save them. As for those of you that are familiar with the channel, about 12 months ago, we did new wheel bearings, new rotors, new pads, and a whole bunch of stuff on the brakes on this. So I wanted to try and save them, and it still leaks. It's not leaking bad. I have actually cleaned it down so you can't actually see, but it does just sort of push past the threads of the helicoil between the caliper housing and the helicoil. So it's not great. So how am I gonna fix that? Well, I've got some new brakes on order for it. They will be here shortly, as in next week. You may be thinking to yourself, well, why didn't I just wait to do the springs and the brakes at the same time while I had the car on the hoist with the wheels off? That's because I'm very time poor. I don't have a lot of time to work on my own cars. I don't have much time for personal time, as running the business does take up a lot of my time. I had a couple of hours this afternoon and I had the springs here, so I thought I'll just pop it up on the hoist and do the springs. So that's one less thing to do when the brakes arrive. So that's why. So I'm gonna just temporarily put the video on hold until the brakes arrive, and once they are here, we'll get it back up on the hoist and yeah, get into the brake side of things, and I'll show you what we're doing. All right, parked it back in its hole. Sorry about all the crap everywhere, by the way, guys. Haven't actually driven the car. I've just run out of time today. Still got a lot I need to do. I've just driven it off the hoist, down the driveway, and reversed it straight back into its hole. I have just given it a little bit of a measure, and it is now, again, through the center of the wheel, on the ground, straight up through the center of the wheel. So we have now got bang on 660. So it's actually come up, yeah, 30 mil. So that's how it looks now. It will settle probably another 5 mil once I drive it a little bit. But yeah, that should give me a fair bit of more room. So I'm just gonna turn the steering wheel real quick and just have a look at that clearance now. With the wheel turned, we've got tons more clearance now. Looking at that. So yeah, got probably, yeah, I've got 3 fingers now as opposed to, I think we only had about 1 at the start. So yeah, that's really good. I'm happy with that. So yeah, all right, onto the brakes when they come in. That should be in about a week or so. Yeah, so we'll pick this video up then. All right, while we are waiting on brake stuff, I'm just gonna do a couple more little things to the suspension. I am still waiting on the stuff to come in, and it's been a few days that the car's just been sitting here. first thing I'm going to do is, I didn't mention it the other day when I was doing the springs, but when I had the front shocks out of this, I noticed that one of the front shocks was leaking a little bit. I do run 90-10 shocks in the front of this, Petters 90-10 shocks, and the driver's side one was leaking slightly. It's not super bad, but I called up Petters and they were able to give me a new pair of shocks under warranty. So I've just got a new pair of front shocks here. So I'm just going to throw them in real quick. And then the other thing I'm going to do, because the car is raking slightly, it's a bit hard to see in the video. So it's obviously we've raised the front a bit now, and the nose of the car is pointing upwards more than I'm used to, I guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just put a spring spacer in the rear that'll raise the rear suspension 10 mil and just see if it sort of levels it out a bit. And I just want to sort of see how that looks. So all it is just this. So that just sits on top of the spring. So you just undo the lower rear shock mount, lower the diff down, pop the spring out, set that on the spring and put it back in. So they're pretty easy to do. So I'm going to do them as well just to see how it looks. And if it's sitting too high or whatever, I can always take them back out. So just going to throw it up on the hoist, blow the front shocks out of it. I'm not going to show you that because I just showed you that earlier in this video. Throw some shocks in it and then we'll do those rear spring spacers. All right, it's back up on the hoist and I've pulled the front shocks out. So as you can see, there's nothing in there. Here's our new shocks here. We'll just slap them in. All right, front end is finally done for as far as suspension goes. So I've got the shocks in. They're all tight, everything's done, and we'll move on to the back. So it's been a while since I've pulled the rear springs out of this thing, but I should just be able to undo that lower shock mount there and slide the shock forward. And then I should be able to get the spring out through this hole here. I should be able to lower the diff down and get the spring out through this hole here. So give it a go, see what happens. All right, slight setback. As you can see, I've taken off the lower shock mounts and I've got my little trusty stand under the diff. And what's actually happening is as I try and lower the diff down, we are hitting the exhaust. So I'm gonna have to drop the tailpipes to get the diff down low enough to be able to get the springs out. All right, great success. I've already done that one. You can see the insulator is sitting on top of the spring there. Just got this one to go now. So you can just grab the spring now. Just grab it out like that. Let's set the insulator on there and reassemble. All right, they're all done, back together. Boom, boom, both sides. So yeah, we'll just drop it down off the hoist now. I'll stick it back in its hole over there. We'll see how it looks. All right, so that's how it looks now. I did do a before and after measurement of this. I didn't bother filming it and it has come up actually about 8 millimeters in the back. So, and now it's only a subtle difference, but it does sit a lot different, a lot more level now. If you look at the gap between the sill and the ground, front and back, it's only a slight difference now at the back, slightly lower. So it doesn't look as raked, if you will. So yeah, it is going for a wheel alignment tomorrow morning. I was supposed to send it for an alignment a few days ago, but I got busy and didn't have time to take it down there. But it is definitely going for an alignment tomorrow. And then hopefully in the next few days, we'll have the brakes here for it. So yeah, next time you see it, we'll be tackling brakes on this thing. Yeah guys, welcome back. It's been about a week and a half since I did the continuation of this video. And I just wanted to let you know where we're up to. So as I mentioned, I've ordered new brakes for the front of this car. It is an upgrade and I heard back from the company that I've ordered them from and there is a hold up. There's a back order on some of the parts to make up the kit that I need. And I'm not going to get the brakes till after Christmas. Race day is tomorrow, so I really wanted to try and figure something out with what I can do. As you can see, it is still leaking out of here. We've got some fluid build up around that edge there and just sort of sitting on the bottom all around here. So that's not great. And after putting the word out to everyone that I know that's into old cars, including going on forums, seeing if anyone's got some of these calipers, ended up finding a pair of Gerlach calipers and they were only about 10 minutes away from where I live out in the country. That's the passenger side one, which I don't need. This is the driver's side one that I'm working on. These have been sitting in a garage for about 10 years. And what I've been doing basically is going through and just cleaning out. They were quite full of rust. I had to fill them up with WD-40 through the brake bleeder and the fluid hole. There was a bit of corrosion on this sealing surface where the brake hose goes, so I've cleaned that up. And after prying, squeezing, belting the piston, I've been able to get it to move back. So I'm really, really hoping that it doesn't leak. It is only a temporary fix. It's also got this pitting here, this bit of pitting hole. I don't know what that is. I'm sure it's fine. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to rebuild this quickly, put it on the car and see if it works, but I'll show you how I go about rebuilding it. So when rebuilding a brake caliper, the first thing you want to do is turn your angle grinder on. Rightio, that looks pretty good. Now, the most important thing you can do when rebuilding a caliper is this. You want to find something you can hang it off like that. New seal, new brake bleeder, new dust seal, grease the slides. Something like that. There we go, one fully rebuilt brand new brake caliper. All right, now that I've got my eBay rebuilt caliper, I'm gonna pull off this leaky caliper with the duddy nipple. And yeah, bang this one on, cross my fingers, cross everything and hope for the best that it doesn't leak. All right, it's on. After having a bit of a moment and realizing that I actually cleaned up and painted the wrong brake caliper, then I had to do this one, which is probably not a bad idea, a bad thing, because the one that I was going to use is this one. That's the one I originally did, and that's the one that's got this imperfection in the back of the housing that I didn't really like, so that's one less thing to worry about. So anyway, it's all on there. I was able to get the piston moving, sort of okay-ish, and I'm just going to go through and do a 3-part bleed process. So what I want to do is, as you can see now, it's dripping, so that is called a gravity bleed. So I'm just going to let it run through a bit of brake fluid under gravity. Then what I'll do after that is I'll connect, wow, if I could learn how to talk, connect my air line to my Airboy brake bleeder, and then I'll suck the brake fluid through with a bit of force, and then I'm gonna get a friend in to help me and do the old pump the brake and hold it thing, and that's when it will be the real test, when it's under pressure, and that can really push through any crud that's still in there. So, see how we go. Alrighties, I think we're there, we're all done. So it's all done, it's all on there, went through the bleeding process, but we did have a little bit of a problem when we got to the point where we're doing the force bleed, so pumping the brake pedal and then holding it and opening the bleeder to push it out, went through that process, and then that brake was completely locked up. So ended up putting the wheel back on it and started the car to try and move it, and it was just wanting to skid that wheel. It was just no good at all. So I was sort of wondering what I was gonna do. So what I ended up doing is jacking it up, taking the wheel back off, ended up having to use pry bars to get the caliper off, as it was really jammed on there. Then what I did, I'll show you on one of these calipers, one of the old ones, is I ended up pumping up the brake pedal. So you pump the brake pedal, brake fluid travels through the hose, goes in behind the piston, pushes the piston out onto the pad to bite the disc. Ended up pumping up the brake pedal half a dozen times or so to push the piston out a bit, and then had to use my wind back tool and levers and stuff to push the piston back. Then I pumped it up to push it out, then pushed the piston back. Did that several times. The more we did it, the easier it got. Then went through and bled everything again. So we've done all of that. And now, I don't want to push it too far. As you can see, the car's rolling. So is it going to be good enough? I don't know. It is only a temporary thing, as I said, until the new brake kit arrives. That should be, sort of in the next month or so. But is it going to be good enough to race? I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. But before I commit to that, I will take the thing for a drive this afternoon and just make sure it is okay. Take it for a decent drive. I'll come back. I'll check the fluid, check for leaks, then I'll jack it up, spin that wheel, and just see how everything's sort of going. And if that happens, the next time you see this car will be at the drag strip. So thanks for hanging in there, guys. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more content. And all going well, we will see you, down at the drags. Take it easy. Thank you.